Cowboys have said they're more focused on the draft than free agency. They signed Javonte Williams to bolster a running game that barely averaged 100 yards, 27th best in the league. Here's his numbers for the last 2 years. 2023, over 1,000 yards, but it took a little bit of a step back, 9 total touchdowns the last 2 years. Brew, this is a classic.
A few years ago, I was a big Javonte Williams fan.
You were?
Yeah. Oh. I mean, privately. Inside. Like, no, I liked it.
We didn't really talk about it.
We didn't talk much the Broncos on this show. I mean, we talked Russ. We ripped, you ripped Russ. But I was thinking inside. Javonte. No, and when,
around the dinner table.
I think, though, when Russ went, I was like, they got Javonte Williams. Like, I liked what I saw. But the prop, that was a few years ago. And what he do? He had the knee injury, right? And he hasn't been the same since. He hasn't averaged 4 yards a carry. He's been like 3.7 in the last 2 seasons. So this is your big, signing. I don't know if he still has it to the level that he did. And then I'm going to throw in the fact that you still have not paid Micah Parsons. And all that means is when you could have got him for $35 million, $36 million, heck. I don't want to say it's going to be closer to $45 million.
Well worn.
But I'm just saying, look, I'm sorry. And you're watching Washington. We know what Philly is. You're watching Washington improve. Had a great year last year, the Commanders, and then this offseason, they are going for it, and you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs.
They also got a new coach. Usually give a new coach.
Yeah, and that's another thing. You didn't even look at Bill Belichick. You didn't even look at Deion Sanders. Hey, you didn't even look at Aaron Glenn or Ben Johnson. You just promoted a guy. And look, maybe Brian Schottenheimer will be great. But from my vantage point, this offseason has been what it usually is for the Cowboys, an F.
Well, I'm not going to give them an F, but I am going to give them the big D. I mean, it's only fitting. Like, they didn't do a tremendous amount. They did re-sign Osa
Odigizua.
There we go.
Great. I mean, they paid a lot of money.
They did pay a lot of money for him, but they did. And then Javonte Turpin, they signed him. Like, I mean, they actually did get the running back that we thought that they should have gone out and gotten last year. They spent the money on the
Javonte. We had all these closet Javonte Williams fans.
Is he still? He's not what he used to be, I don't think.
No.
Every day, I haven't heard Javonte Williams say
I'm not at all saying, I'm just saying, last year, we were waiting for them to sign a running back, and they waited this year, and they got their running back. So, I mean, maybe it works out.
They could have had Derrick Henry.
I would have given them an N/A, not applicable. Because they, once again, are not participating in the offseason.
But that should be enough.
No, I agreed. I was being, I guess, a little pedantic there. I don't understand. Wilds and I have very different opinions on, or interest levels in teams signing back their own players.
I like that. I'm Mr. Continuity.
No. Of us discussing it.
Oh.
And so I find the fact that every day that Micah Parsons is unsigned, I think it's I think it's like the 4th biggest NFL story. Because it might not be interesting to talk about like that, but it is so obvious that you must either re-sign this player as soon as possible or just be like, screw it, we're trading him. Yeah. Before the draft. Like, it just doesn't. And so every day they don't do it, I think the grade goes lower. Right. And I think it's a mistake.
Is it costing them maybe $750,000 a day?
Oh, that's probably high. But it is. But every time, I mean, the last week it has, Brew, because a week ago it was 35. Then Crosby got 35 and a half. Then Myles Garrett, with his newfound love for Brew's hometown, Cleveland, and now it's 40. So we have tried, I think, on this show for 2 reasons. One is because we try to genuinely be fair and kind to people. And the other is also because Coach Mangini, our partner, has a real relationship with Brian Schottenheimer. Not to write that guy off. It's unfair. But it is also honest to be like, that was as underwhelming, doesn't mean it won't work, but as underwhelming of a coaching search and hire as one could make. And so all of that goes into a bad offseason.
Moving on.
This is the problem with the Cowboys, though, when you make the decisions that you make, especially from coaching, is that when you have all these other coaches that come in, Vrabel, Fangio, even as a coordinator, quite frankly, Ben Johnson, obviously. These coaches come in there and they demand respect, and you're not only paying them for the actual X's and O's and how you're gonna, run a practice and what you're gonna work on, film, all that type of stuff. You're paying for their expertise. And you're helping now figure out, what do we need to do? What do we need to do? If you don't think that Howie Roseman went to Fangio and said, all right, man, this is what I'm thinking we should do in free agency. This is what I'm thinking we should do in the draft. What are your thoughts? Or maybe even reverse. You know what? I don't want to tell you anything. You tell me what you want, and then we'll go from there. And I'll tell you, what I'm thinking, what's possible, etc. It's collaborative. When you have great coaches, it's collaborative. I don't think there's any collaboration with the Dallas Cowboys. Sean Hubbard doesn't come in and say, this is what I want. And Jerry Jones is like, all right, let's talk about it. I don't think it's any of that. It's really not. It's always, inferior, superior, subordinate. Like you're not bringing anything else. So you will always just essentially have a coach. That's it. X's and O's coach. That's it. Hey, you're the one that runs the practice. You're the one that does kind of whatever you want on the field, in the middle of the game. That's all you, bud. I got everything else. You don't need to worry about anything else. And it's like, that's not how good football teams are run. It's just not. There's a ton of collaboration, and it varies, obviously. And sometimes great coaches don't always know what they need. And sometimes great coaches, actually make legitimate mistakes, and that's why we see sometimes when some coaches have too much power in personnel and it goes unchecked, you can kind of go in the wrong direction. And so it's always a combination, because again, this is what makes football so cool, is that it's very complex, and it's not just X's and O's, and it's not just personnel, that there is a business side, there is a financial side. And I can tell you right now, someone, as amazing as Sean McVay or Andy Reid are, they're probably not great at trying to figure out what it means to trade a second-round draft pick, what that means 2 years from now, 3 years from now, what it means that when we pay someone $45 million for the next 3 years, like, that's not their expertise. And they're not supposed to know that. And that's why the collaboration to me is awesome. Like, and it makes it so cool. And it's why so many opinions can actually, are, and a lot of times, worth to be heard. And that's why it's not all or nothing. That's why you see so many of these GMs as well, and a lot of these other guys, like, it actually, there's a lot of benefit for them to not even have football experience, because they're going to view it through a different lens. And again, all this needs to be balanced. And that's why I keep saying collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. All the great teams have collaboration, okay? From ownership to GM to coaching, etc., etc., etc. I don't think there's any collaboration. I made a joke in the comment section to, really smart longtime fan Travis O'Shea of the Dallas Cowboys, and I'm just like, they're not doing. I made a comment. I said it feels like every single team is getting better, and he just randomly was like, yeah, except for Dallas. And it's funny, Dallas wasn't even on my radar, and I was just like, yeah, that's so true. And I'm like, do you think they just don't do anything in free agency because, like, Jerry Jones wants to be the kingmaker. He wants to be the master that's kind of like, I'm the one that drafted you. I'm the one that discovered you. I'm the one that found you. I made you. Whereas if you pick up like an established, running back, like let's just use Saquon Barkley as just like an easy example because he was a free agent last year. It's like, he can't say, I made you. I made you. Like he can't claim ownership. It's just a bizarre thing that goes on with the Dallas Cowboys. And yeah, seriously, when you see almost every team feels like they're getting better, that they're actually taking steps forward, you're like, the Cowboys aren't. And not to mention, what does that say about the belief in Dak Prescott? Because you're just going to sit and just draft y'all young guys. Because we can say, oh, well, Jerry Jones is great at drafting, which is true. That is definitely one of his legitimate, strengths. But, like, you need guys who can win and play now. The Eagles could have drafted a running back last season. Would that have helped them? Or would going out and getting Saquon mattered? You need to know when you need to go out there and get the guys that matter. The Eagles even made a trade, a few years ago at this point, obviously, but for A.J. Brown. They could have drafted another wide receiver. They could have done these things, but it doesn't always make sense. And so you're going to just now continue to draft and develop young guys with your aging quarterback who you just paid a boatload of money. And you can make the argument, well, we paid him a boatload of money, but then he restructured his contract. And it's kind of like, but for what then? And now you are going to give Micah Parsons like all this money. It just seems like there's no actual direction. And that continues to be the problem. And I think that's also probably the biggest problem of when you're an owner and the GM. You probably have too much power at that point. And it's probably just not the way to optimally, even if let's say Howie Roseman, who people think is a top GM, obviously, proven, multiple Super Bowls with two completely different teams, two completely different coaches. Him and Howie Roseman are essentially the common denominator of that. And you can make the argument that if Howie Roseman was also the owner of the Eagles, he would be a worse GM. Because there's just more to deal with. You're thinking about other things. You're thinking more about money probably than you ever have, and not just in terms of how to win, but just now also kind of like how much money is going in my pocket. You're just thinking about all this other stuff. And I think you just get too spread thin. And now you're talking about a guy who's like in his 80s or however the heck old he is. And you're just like, I don't think like anyone that age is going to be able to optimally run like anything. I don't think that someone like that could run, a Foot Locker or something, a McDonald's, a Walmart, anything, like let alone $1 billion franchise like the Dallas Cowboys. It's just kind of crazy. It really is. So that's why we keep seeing what we're seeing. And yeah, I don't know. You can see the fingerprints when Vrabel goes to the Patriots. You can see the decisions that they're starting to make. When Ben Johnson goes to the Bears, you can see the decisions that they're making. You see it with Andy Reid. You see it. You saw when Fangio got to the Eagles what they did defensively, the concrete decisions that they made. If you don't think Fangio had a major part in that, it's just not right. You're just wrong. Like, of course he did. I can guarantee you that Howie Roseman had an extensive conversation about Bond, and saying like, what are your thoughts on signing him and re-signing him and et cetera, et cetera. Moving on from CJ Gardner-Johnson, like these are conversations that they're having. Again, collaboration. So I just, like I said, man, like the more videos that I make around the Dallas Cowboys, the more I legitimately, genuinely feel bad. I honestly do, because it's just like you're sitting around watching free agency and all of this, and it's just like, where are you getting better? Why are you expecting to be a better team? Even if you want to blame all the injuries of last year, like, they finished 7-10, like, you think they're just magically going to be like a 12, 13, 14 win team and be like legitimate contenders to win the Super Bowl? Because at this point, and I've tried to ask this question before, but I never really got like a concrete answer. It's like, at this point, because we always would talk about all the Dallas Cowboys, they're SBOB, Super Bowl or bust, right? In terms of like anything short of a Super Bowl would be considered, a failure, or at least like getting to the Super Bowl. But at this point, considering how far this can has been kicked down the road and all the money that's been given to Dak, and again, since Dak became a starter, watching the Philadelphia Eagles legitimately go to 3 Super Bowls and win 2 with, again, 2 different quarterbacks, coaching, watching the Washington Commanders day 1 with Jaden Daniels ball out, get to the NFC Championship game. Like, is it like I can't see even like what would be if I was a diehard Dallas Cowboys fan. I don't even know what would make me happy. Would I be okay with them just getting to the NFC Championship game? Like, I don't see how I would be content with that. And getting to the Super Bowl, I don't see how I would be content with that. I can't see it. So you're just, I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's just a mess. They continue to be such a mess, and they don't make any decisions that you can point to and say, that was smart. That was smart. That was a great move by them. And if you can't say that about a team, then they typically don't win. You could say that about the Rams. You could say that about the Eagles. You could say that about the Commanders. You could say that about the Chiefs. You could say that about the Lions. You could say that about all the teams that have been winning over the last. We don't even have to go too far. We could just say the last 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. You can point to all of those teams and say that was a smart move. Or okay, yeah, you see what they did there. Oh, did you see that hire? Did you see who they got in free agency? That was really smart. You can't say that about that. They gave CeeDee Lamb his money. They signed Dak Prescott. Okay, great. And right, because of the moves that they made with how they did all this, they had to pay Dak more money. They had to pay CD more money, and they have to pay if they actually do sign him more money. When you could have gotten all three of those players for cheaper, not cheap, but cheaper than what you ended up paying them. You had to each pay them top dollar. And it didn't technically need to be that way. So, and right, this is the big move. $3 million deal for Williams. Like, I don't know. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Dallas Cowboys and their off-season moves so far? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here and absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.